Blim blam. Hey, yo. We're gonna talk about Labo VR and you're gonna sit there and like it. If you want, I don't know. Also, how are you? I love you. Anyway, I'm here. This is a part impressions video, part discussion video, kind of talking about the specific Labo VR experiences we have right now, but then also kind of what it means for Nintendo, what its potential kind of is. Naturally, I will be talking about Mario and Zelda, but first, I kind of want to just focus on that Labo VR kit to kind of get it out there, the core experience and kind of like how it works and what I think about it, just the very basic concept of using your Switch as a little VR machine. So about the basic experience, I will say it is better than I expected. It is super low resolution. Everyone calls it the screen door effect, because basically the Switch is a 720p screen. It's splitting the game up into like two little, like imagine just two circles on your Switch. That's basically what it is, one in each eye. So each one is like a really tiny little collection of pixels. So it is really low resolution. I guess maybe I just expected worse. I just expected it to be lower resolution. I don't know, but like the actual effect of feeling like you are in a weird place in the virtual reality, it works. It is just more effective than I thought, and that's pretty cool. Like, I've had a really big interest in VR for a while, and I haven't really gotten to try a lot of VR, even though I want to. I just kind of haven't gotten around to it. It's really expensive. Kind of want to be a set, because I'm a really big immersion guy. I love the idea of being in the game. I get this like weird kind of surreal feeling whenever, for the very, very few VR experiences I've had, and I love it. It's just this weird, I don't know, something about being in the game. I'm just looking around. It's like a whole different kind of world than a regular video game. And I will say, like, it did give me that kind of effect. You know what I mean? That effect of just like, oh, looking around, being like, where am I? So yeah, at the very least, it is that effective. And of course, it's not just the motion tracking. You use the Joy-Cons to, move around stuff. You got like a pointer, and like, I actually haven't done the blaster thing yet. I still want to. I've just been spending a bunch of time playing with the basic kit. I just got that. It comes with the goggles and the blaster. Even just the goggles and Joy-Cons. There are a bunch of different games. They're kind of more toys than games. Like, there's like a couple little challenges to do, but like there's a pretty surprisingly large amount of activities to do just with that, without even the blaster, without even shooting stuff. Lots of little games, or even like little movies you can watch, which is kind of interesting. But I was mostly focused on the games. And these are really, like I said, just toys. So they're just tech demos. You're picking stuff up, you're moving it around, you're kind of seeing how it interacts. You're, controlling like a little robot guy, making him jump up on platforms and stuff. I am a little confused because I kind of thought all of these, because, it doesn't come with a strap. You got to hold it to your head. So I kind of thought all of these different games and activities would, require just pointing at you, holding it up at your face and not require the use of your hands. But some of these do, like, you need a controller to like aim and stuff. So like you are having to awkwardly hold it against your face with one hand while you point around a controller. Pretty weird. I don't know why they decided to do that. Like, there's other stuff where you put the Joy-Cons on and you hold it to your face, and so you're using it like a controller. That actually makes sense. But like when you're pointing around, trying to hold it on, it's pretty uncomfortable. I really wish I had a strap. It would make it so much more comfortable. That's a little weird. But that's the basic VR kit. I was kind of surprised by how much stuff there is to do. Like, you're just looking at the activities, and then it's like, oh wow, and when I put together the blaster, I'll have all of these. And if I had the rest of the kit, I only bought half of it. If I had the other half, it's just like 1,000 million different games to play. So I don't know, I'm almost thinking this might be more content than the other not the other VR kits, the other Labo kits. I mean, I could be wrong, but just, I don't know, the other ones, the variety kit, you got like 6 different games or something. I don't know, there's just a ton of different things to do and ton of different silly little ways to play and VR silliness to get into. So then, of course, that leads us to the Mario update, the Super Mario Odyssey update. This is just kind of a little collection of, I don't even know if you say mini games, just kind of mini areas. They're little versions, smaller versions of some of the game's kingdoms. You run around. The basic idea is to find instruments and give them to people who need the instruments because you're putting a band together or something, which is a pretty cool idea. And once you beat all the levels and do that, you unlock this thing where everybody's playing together. It's kind of fun. It's really, it's very, very small. It's the kind of thing you do in 10, 20 minutes or something like that. It's really just a toy to show off the VR. And it's hard for me to believe that Nintendo would make this thinking, oh, this is gonna sell people. This is gonna make people buy the Labo kit. I mean, like, maybe they did, but it feels to me more like it's one of those things where Nintendo just, sometimes they like a concept and they just want to play with it. And I do love them for that. I love that about them, that sometimes it's like, it's not even a business thing. They're just like, this is kind of fun. Let's play around with this. Let's make a couple games like this. That's the vibe that I get from Mario. It is fun. Mario's simpler, colorful graphics, they translate pretty well in VR. The simpler, the better. And that's why, in fact, the best out of all of these so far, spoiler alert, but the best VR experience is in that base Labo thing, because all the shapes are really smooth and simple and colorful and stuff. So you get a little bit more detailed with Mario. It loses the effect a little bit because you're trying to see stuff, and you can like zoom in a little bit, but it's that's where you're starting to be like, oh, these are recognizable symbols that I'm seeing, and it's a lot more apparent how low res the whole thing is. So yeah, Mario, just kind of a fun little diversion. I mean, it's fun to see a new Mario Odyssey thing at all, just because we've not really gotten a lot of DLC for it. So just the whole like, oh cool, I'm making a band, that's neat. You get to like watch the opening cutscene with the VR, so it's like 3D. So that's pretty cool. And then moving on to Zelda, it's weird that Mario gets a little chunk of DLC, just a little couple like mini games basically that you can play in VR, and then Zelda, they're like, how about you could just play the whole game? This is a whole game. Like, what? Where did that, like, why can't we play all of Mario in the VR? I don't really quite get it. I mean, I guess it takes time to implement one or the other, so just a little surprising. I wonder if they're gonna start making VR modes for all their first-party games. Mario Kart and just anything basically could have a VR mode. It's just making the game render 2 images at once to make it kind of look 3D for you and add motion tracking camera control. So naturally, Zelda is the most detailed out of all of these games, so it is the hardest to look at. It's the most obvious that it's very, very low resolution, everything, because you got grass and bugs and flowers and everything. It's super duper pixelated, and there still is that effect though. There's like the tiniest hint of that kind of cool immersion effect, you know what I mean? So that is nice. It's so low res that it's almost like kind of hard to navigate. So it's even like they said, they didn't really plan on anyone playing Breath of the Wild in VR like the whole way through. They kind of just wanted to be like an option where like, oh, maybe you're in a cool place and you want to pop on the VR and look at it like that. Although it's kind of the opposite. It's more like you're playing in VR and you're like, oh, I found a cool place I want to see. Let me take off the VR. Let me put it on the TV or the handheld so I can actually see it. So of course, like, the only difference with it is that like you still have full camera control in Breath of the Wild. The only difference is it just also has the head tracking. So you move your head right, it makes the camera turn right. You look up, the camera kind of looks up. So it's just this. It's a much more subtle effect. It's just kind of you being able to look around. And so my main takeaway from basically all of this VR stuff, but mostly Breath of the Wild, like my main takeaway is like it itself is kind of only okay. It's kind of a fun thing to play around with, but it is the future, the potential future of Nintendo and virtual reality. That's what kind of fascinates me. Because like, think about it, like PlayStation VR, they gotta have headsets. They gotta have a big, expensive headsets. And you got your Oculus and your Vive and all that stuff. But Nintendo, like imagine, like let me just set up a scenario for you. Imagine Nintendo keeps doing the Switch forever. Like, every new Nintendo console is going to be a handheld with detachable Joy-Cons and a little screen. Maybe it's not. I kind of hope it is, because I think it's perfect. So imagine that that's the case. And then imagine 1 or 2 generations from now, 4K is the new standard. Like, nothing is ever lower than 4K, because 4K is pretty darn high, and eventually that is going to be the standard, even with Nintendo, even though they're usually behind in hardware. So imagine we have a Switch 3 or something with a 4K screen right there, still with detachable Joy-Cons, probably with even better motion tracking technology. And then imagine Nintendo, again, puts out a kind of headset thing. I imagine probably a better quality one with like a strap and stuff. It doesn't have to necessarily be Labo. And I don't know if there are, I don't know enough about the technology. I don't know if there are a lot of limitations to how good an image can be when it's doing the, you know, the Google Cardboard style, whatever, basically of just having a device and slipping it in and having two magnifying glasses shooting them at your eyes in different directions. I don't know if that inherently is worse than having a full set on your head with its own mirrors and all that stuff. But I do imagine that if the effect is this good on the Switch, in this case, it's gonna be a lot better with a 4K screen. It's gonna look way sharper, because like I said, I am really impressed with how well this does work. So in the future, if we have a much better Switch, like this is gonna be, it's gonna look pretty darn good. And if that's the case, then Nintendo can incorporate VR into any of their games. Any of them. Not, you know, they don't have to have the expensive headset. They don't have to, and that's what's great about this, is they're not like everybody else where, like PlayStation, they count on you buying a PlayStation VR headset, which is expensive. That's a whole separate ecosystem, and there are PSVR games and everything. But like Nintendo can more casually incorporate VR, and of course they could do separate games like the Labo thing, where it's like you have to have the headset, or you know, the headset thing that you put your Switch into in order to play these games. But then like on a broader scale, this Breath of the Wild camera control, it's really simple. They could put that into anything. And if it looks that good, I love the idea of any game that I boot up, I can just play it like this, because that immersion, I really, really love that immersion. I want to be able to just play the game casually, but just kind of built into my experience. If I want to look at something on the right, I just turn my head. You know what I mean? You look around, you're kind of in the game. And if it's got a high enough resolution, then you're not even gonna notice that you're playing. Because right now it's distracting. I don't want to play. I don't want to just play Breath of the Wild like this. But in the future, like I could see myself defaulting to this mode. I could see myself wanting to basically always be playing with VR enabled, because I just love the feeling that it gives me. And it's great because it's still technically handheld, it's still mobile, you know, you're still not tied to the TV. Instead of sitting there with your Switch on your lap, you just slip it into your thing, pop that on your head, and use your Joy-Cons or Pro Controller or whatever. Like it's still detached, and I love that about it. It's kind of another step up, another extension of the whole Switch idea. And I don't know, Nintendo could easily just throw it out after this. They kind of like to do that. They kind of like to just like mess with an idea before they're actually quite ready to make it work all the way. They play with it, and then they get tired of it and they throw it away. And later technology is better, and it's like, how about you do it now? And they're like, I don't really want to anymore. And then, oh, right. And then of course, like the Joy-Cons, that's another thing that if that's always incorporated into the Switch and its sequels or whatever, that's just something we'll always have. And that's another thing that with other companies, you gotta buy the PlayStation Move controllers, you get a Vive and an Oculus, you gotta buy the motion controllers. With the Switch, you just have the Joy-Cons. You buy a Switch, you have the Joy-Cons, boom, you have your motion controllers. So yeah, it's less about what it's doing now and more about what it could do in the future that excites me. Will Nintendo do it? I do not know, but I kind of hope they do. I really like this idea. I would love to see it expanded upon. I would love to see it potentially become a regular part of Nintendo's whole thing, their whole ecosystem. It doesn't have to be a big, giant, required part to be a thing at all. They don't have to force it on anybody, and that's what's great about it just being built in the Switch itself, is it's not like the PlayStation VR and all that stuff, where it's all separate games and all that. I know there are some games that either have a VR mode or not. That's a whole thing. But let me know what you think about Labo VR. Have you tried it? Do you like VR? Does it make you sick? It's kind of making me sick. I'm gonna say none of Zelda made me sick, because that's the only one where you're actually like running, and whenever the ground is moving below you, I will say I was getting a little motion sick by the end of that. I'm hoping, like, as I move forward doing VR stuff, if I get a headset or something, I'm hoping that I get used to it, because yeah, you might have heard, I've told the story before. I played the Skyrim VR at Loxton's house, and I got so sick I almost threw up. Anyway, though, do you like VR? Do you like this idea? Do you like the idea of Nintendo incorporating it in the future versions of their consoles? Let me know down in the comments, and you have yourselves a terrific day. See you later.